Going back in time and piecing together the ecological and evolutionary history of these animals, we can better conserve and make more informed decisions of how to sort of think about conserving them moving forward. Hi, I'm Larisa DeSantis, and I study the intersection of evolution and climate change. So here at Vanderbilt, I have what's called the DREAM Lab, which stands for Dietary Reconstructions and Ecological Assessments of Mammals. We try to assess the paleobiology and ecology of animals through the lens of diet. And the reason why we do this is we want to understand how they responded to climate change in the past, and this can hopefully tell us some important sort of cautionary lessons that can be of direct relevance today. So for example, one of the areas that I do a lot of work is in Australia, and we study a lot of the mammals there, things like kangaroos and wombats, and we also study things like marsupial carnivores. And so there used to be this animal called marsupial lion, or also known as a killer wombat. This thing was a force to reckon with. It had a bite force that was about 70% that of an African lion's, but it was only about 30% the body size. And yet, this thing went extinct. And so one of our pressing questions is why? And ultimately, what we learned from our studies is that by looking at the stable isotopes of their teeth, or the chemical signatures, we were able to figure out that they were highly specialized on forest-dwelling prey. Now, the challenge is that Australia began to get much more arid, and the forests began to decline, and are no longer in a lot of regions where they used to be. And in fact, as these forests decline and as these prey essentially went away, this animal no longer had the ability to hunt effectively from the treetops. And that's why we think it went extinct. So even though this thing is an apex predator and a force to be reckoned with, it was no match for climate change in Australia. You know, when we're thinking about climate change, we're projecting into, 2100, maybe 2200, maybe 2300. And what we've learned from the fossil record is that, when there have been periods of dramatic climate change, and there have, that recovery process, it often takes hundreds, thousands, or even hundreds of thousands of years to actually return to that sort of normal state. And so I think this is something that makes us uncomfortable to think about, but it's really important that we start thinking on these longer time scales, on these geologic time scales, and not just on human time scales when we're thinking about things like climate change and the impact that climate change is having on biological organisms across the globe.